not considered published. All right, and here's probably the most important element of all. The statement must be false. Provably false. Provably false. Now, what do I mean by that? All right, I want to give you an example. Let's say I get up and say, Coke is better than Pepsi. Or pistachio ice cream is better than salted caramel. I don't know about that, but whatever, right? I do like pistachio too. So you get my point. Or purple is better than green, whatever. So I say Coke is better than Pepsi, so Pepsi-Cola Company sues me for slandering their product. Now there's a problem. How do they prove one way or the other which one's better? What am I getting at here? Personal preference. In other words, your opinion. All right? So when we say false, the statement must be something other than your subjective personal opinion, because that's not provable one way or the other. So there has to be a factual element that can be proven one way or the other for it to be false. So for example, if I say Coke is better than Pepsi because Pepsi has nuclear waste built into the formula, and whenever you drink a Pepsi, you're being irradiated. Now, that can be proven one way or the other, right? We can plot a Geiger counter and see if you're radioactive or not. So the idea is there has to be a factual component that you can prove one way or the other. If it's purely a matter of subjective personal taste, that's not a misstatement of fact. And again, this has to be done intentionally, remember. This is an intentional tort. So this idea of falsehood is difficult to prove, depending on the statement. So there has to be a statement that's provably wrong. That's probably the biggest reason why defamation cases are very hard to win. So I get calls about this all the time, usually involving Facebook or other social media, right? So I'll get a call from a business client, let's say. Let's say it's a restaurant. My competitor posted a Facebook post that say that their French fries are better than mine. I want to sue them for libel and defamation and slander and emotional distress and anything I can think of. I'm like, okay, is it true? Well, I don't know. Or, maybe is somebody posts on their Facebook page about somebody else, so-and-so is a heroin dealer. So the first question I'm going to ask him is, are you a heroin dealer? Is it true? Well, yeah, but it's still bad. Well, yeah, don't do that. So the idea is, if it's true, it's not defamation. It may be really bad. You may be publishing something about somebody that is horrible. But if it's true, it's not defamation. So the idea when we say false, number one, there's an old saying, truth is an absolute defense to defamation. If it's true, even if it's really bad, it's not defamation because you must prove it's false. Part two, to be able to prove it's false, the statement must be factually provable. So that's where you see it oftentimes, on Amazon reviews and TripAdvisor and all the different review sites that we have that everybody likes, I think. I use them all the time. But if I'm going to sue somebody for posting a bad review, I've got to prove that what they're saying is factually untrue. Not just, I didn't like this product because I didn't like the color. That's subjective, it's not factually relevant. So that's where defamation cases usually are hard to prove. Now, who has the burden of proof? That's another issue. The person that is being talked about or printed about, they have to prove the statement is false. So if I publish a big article about some movie actor, I'm accusing them of all these things, they have to prove that what I'm saying is false, not the other way around. I don't have to prove it's true. They have to prove it's false. Now the problem with that is, just say, you're the one that's being gossiped about, basically. So now you've got to come in and prove that what's being said is not true. So now we're going to delve into all your private life and depositions and discovery, and it's going to be, and you may not want to go through all that. Even if it truly is false, proving it is another matter, and that can be very difficult. All right. All right. Now, number 5 of the elements on defamation. This is where it gets even more interesting. So again, defamation arises out of English common law. And England, of course, especially then, they do have some free speech, but not to the extent that we do in the United States under the First Amendment. Freedom of the press, free speech. So defamation, making statements, publishing them in a newspaper or whatever, has a direct conflict with the First Amendment right to free speech and freedom of the press, right? So if you think about it, if we had true, pure free speech, pure freedom of the press, anything could be printed, whether it's true or false, it wouldn't matter. So there's a balance that has to take place, because clearly we don't want people publishing false statements about other people, but on the other hand, we want free speech and free press. So there has to be a balance there. And so this is where we get into the public figure element. And basically, here's the idea. If this false statement is about somebody that's a public figure, that could be a politician, a movie star, a musician, a business person that's well known, somebody that's an influencer on the internet, a sports person, whatever, okay? They're out there in the public realm. In that case, in order for them to be able to sue under the First Amendment standards, they have to prove, number 1, that the publisher made the statement knowing it was false. Number 2, that they published it anyway in bad faith with what's called actual malice, which essentially is a fancy way of saying they did it with the intent to hurt the person knowing it was false. So it's a very high standard. So that's where the First Amendment protects. That's why we have, the tabloids and how they can get away with a lot of that because of the First Amendment. So there's a balancing that goes on. And again, under the First Amendment, there's some protection even for a false statement. This idea of a public figure has been greatly expanded, of course, with the internet now. Because essentially anybody that's out there, if I'm out putting YouTube videos out and all that kind of thing, I'm in essence making myself a public figure by my own volition. So I'm not going to get into that. That's a case-by-case basis. But I just want you to be aware that there are First Amendment implications to a defamation case. All right, let's move on. Next tort is invasion of privacy, or privacy if you're in the UK. And this is a tort that is constantly evolving. And basically it's the idea that someone, again, intentionally engages in an activity that impinges on somebody's privacy or their right of solitude or their public image. They're using it without compensation. So there are various different versions of this. So one version is called the tort of intrusion on personal solitude. And again, this goes by different names depending what state you're in. So that might be something like, I put a spy cam in your hotel room and I'm videotaping everything and publishing it or putting it out on the internet. Again, it's not defamation because it's true. I'm broadcasting what you're doing. But clearly, it's your private hotel room or your apartment or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But clearly that's your private space. And so that would be that kind of a tort. We see a lot of those are also situations where somebody with the video, our iPhones and stuff, everybody has video now, or video somebody in the bathroom stall or something like that, right? Next one is public disclosure of private facts. So this is a tort whereby somebody has gained private information through some sort of relationship with the person that is either a fiduciary or a professional type relationship usually. So for example, a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer, a therapist, a clergy person, whatever, a counselor. That's usually where you see a lot of times is or those kind of things. So in other words, I'm your lawyer, and you tell me things that you've done in confidence, attorney-client privilege, and then I go out and I go on a talk show and I start talking about it. Well, one, I've just violated my attorney-client privilege with you. You could sue me for that separately. But also you could sue me for this tort. So, let's say you tell me that you're a child pornographer and a heroin dealer and all kinds of bad things, and I go out and talk about that on a talk show. So that would be this tort here. Now, would that be defamation if I went on a talk show and told all that? No, why? That's true, exactly. So even though it's not defamation, and the reason why I point that out, it might be this tort. So just because it's not one tort doesn't mean it's not another one. Now it could be both. All right, putting somebody's name in a false light. I need to update my examples here. So this is something where somebody, again, intentionally does something to put somebody's reputation or viewpoint or whatever the case may be into a false light. So I put here somebody signing somebody's name on an abortion petition one way or the other. In fact, it's not true. That would be forgery as well. But probably a better example of that nowadays, when I wrote this up, we didn't have it so much. Deep fakes. You guys know what a deep fake is? A fake video that's been altered, right? Or perhaps selective editing on a video. Photoshopping a photo or other digital manipulation and then portraying it as being actual. That probably would fall into this type of a tort. There are also First Amendment implications there too. So, and then the next one, appropriation of name or likeness. Well, when I wrote this up, I was picking on Brad Pitt. Sorry, Brad. So this would be where I'm using somebody's name. So like, let's say I have a water company and I Photoshop Brad Pitt holding up my water saying, I love Hasbrook's water. Now he never agreed to that. I'm using his name or likeness for a commercial purpose without consent. So he could sue me for legal and equitable remedies. Legal remedy for monetary damages. Equitable remedy, a court order prohibiting me from doing that. Cease and desist order. So that kind of thing. Now, where we're seeing, again, I told you this is a constantly evolving tort. And the reason why is technology. Now, we've got drones. That's probably the next big area where we're going to start seeing invasion of privacy cases. And the courts don't really know what to do with that. I mean, public space versus private space. If I'm hovering a drone over a public street, but I'm watching your windows and I have an infrared camera on my drone, I'm in the public airspace, but I'm videotaping through your walls. I can see right through your walls with it. Where does that line end and begin? And that's where it gets kind of difficult. So drones and other type of micro cameras and that sort of thing. All right, I'm actually going to break there. That's what my little line is right here. Because we'll get into the next class session. So we're going to break there for today, and then we'll pick up with malicious prosecution next class session.